Great. So thank you everyone for being here at tonight's special meeting of the San Mateo County Harbor District Board of Commissioners. This is the public workshop for June 13th, 2021. I'd like to convene the meeting at 6 p.m. Roll call, please, Melanie.
President Shane Corrali.
Present.
Commissioner Matoush.
Present.
Commissioner Lorenz.
Here.
Commissioner Zemke.
I'm present.
Great. So I would like we have a quorum tonight. So I will open this up as part of the regular agenda for this special meeting to public comment, to public comments right now for items that are not on the agenda. For anyone who would like to speak, you have 2 minutes to speak. I don't see any hands raised, Melanie, but I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything.
I do not see anyone's hands raised.
Okay, then I will close public comment and open it up for the discussion.
I'm sorry, I see William Smith's hand is now raised.
Oh, okay, perfect. I'll leave public comment open for Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Good evening, commissioners, and sorry, I'm trying to figure out the buttons here for making public comment. I want to address the parking issue, which I hopefully will be part of this meeting tonight. The main parking lot in the harbor should be set for a 12 to 24 hour parking in the main parking lot, so all customers can have access for parking for both the retail stores and also for the charter vessels and fish sales on the pier. As it is now, we have commercial fishermen that park there for days and weeks, and we lose that parking and access to the public. It would facilitate also ADA people that would like that would be able to use that parking lot since there's not always enough spots for the ADA. Thank you very much.
Sorry, any other public comment? Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any other public comment for items that are not on the agenda?
I see no hands.
Great, thank you. So we'll move on to the discussion part of our meeting, which is the master plan workshop number 1. I'm going to turn the meeting over to General Manager Pruitt and I think John Moran. So Jim or John, would you like to kick off the master plan workshop, which is really the main event for tonight's meeting?
Yes, good evening, commissioners, President Shane Corrali, members of the public. Thank you for taking time out of your day to participate in this. It is very important that we get your feedback on what the harbor should look like and what they should be doing well into the future. We did, as discussed before, the Harbor District did hire a consultant to assist us with this master plan project, Dudek, and they're here with us tonight. And I will be turning the meeting over to Jane from Dudek. She'll run this workshop and walk us through all the different slides with relation to this workshop. So Jane, please take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you, General Manager Pruitt, and thank you, Chair Shane Corrali, for having us this evening. We appreciate the introduction. Welcome to this first workshop, which is also a special meeting. This is the first in a series of 3 workshops, special meetings as well, for the San Mateo County Harbor District Master Plan. We thank you very much for joining this evening. We know all of your lives are busy, and we're grateful that you have chosen to spend some time with us, as this is an important topic for 2 very special places in the community. Thanks, Maddie. Slide number 1, welcome again to the public workshop. Get to the substance. I just want to provide you a brief overview of what we're going to be talking about this evening. So again, first workshop in 3. And this workshop is really an introduction. It's a broad overview of the process. We will provide you with the background of the work completed to date, as well as provide you with an understanding of the scope of work of the plan. And we're also here to listen to your thoughts and comments. The agenda is right here for you: introductions, district history and jurisdiction, purpose of the plan, background, existing conditions, the work we've completed to date, scope of the plan and opportunities, plan schedule and ongoing outreach and engagement, and then we will turn it over for public comment. Tonight's presentation will be approximately 40 to 45 minutes. During the presentation, our team will be presenting with their cameras on. We kindly request that you stay on mute until the public comment session. Once we open it to public comment, we ask that you raise your hand and you will be called on, excuse me, in the order that your hand was raised. Each commenter will have an initial 3 minutes for their comment, and as time allows, follow up 3 minutes. We have a number of folks that are going to be speaking with you this evening. Myself, Jane Gray, I am a regional planner and am working on outreach and engagement for this process. Brad, would you like to go ahead and make an introduction? Brad, I don't think we can hear you.
Sorry about that. I did that. Okay. Yeah, my name is Brad Damons, independent coastal management consultant, and I'm working alongside with GHD and DUDEC on this master plan process for the Harbor District, as well as several other projects for the Harbor District, mainly at Pillar Point Harbor.
Thank you, Brad. We're really happy to have you, excuse me, as part of our team. Bob, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Robert Sherwood. I'm a civil engineer. I specialize in the waterfront area, over 20 years of experience inspecting, working on projects from permitting and design all the way through construction. So very much enjoy working around the water.
Thank you. And then we also have Asha from DUDEC. Asha?
Hi, everyone. Asha Blyer with DUDEC. I'm the practice director for DUDEC's Planning and Urban Design Group, and I will be leading the preparation of the master plan, working in collaboration with the team.
Thanks. And somebody who needs no introduction is General Manager Pruitt. He's going to walk us through this next slides.
Good evening again. I want to provide some of the background for the district and also kind of the authorities we have and what the district is focusing on in accordance with our codes and our ordinances. First of all, the district, and we'll go into more depth on this in the future, but the district passed a strategic plan which included a mission statement. And the mission of the district right now, per that mission statement, is the Harbor District provides a fiscally and environmentally responsible stewardship of its maritime resources, emergency response, and public access. The district does that under the Harbor and Navigation Code and our local ordinances and our policies. The strategic plan also provides our vision for the district, the core values, and the goals of the district. And again, that was passed and is dated January 20th, or January 2020. With respect to the district, it says the district was formed under an act. The act that they're speaking to provides that this act provides for the formation of government operations of harbor districts and calling for conducting elections in such districts of harbor commissioners, defining their powers and duties, providing for the issuance and disposal of bonds of such harbor district, and providing the assessment, levy, and collection of taxes for the payment of such bonds and annual expenses. Under the authority of the act, the San Mateo County Harbor District was established by the San Mateo County by resolution in 1933 by the Board of Supervisors, who established the entire county of San Mateo as our area for district boundaries. The Harbor and Navigation Code provides, again, this is what the authority we have to operate our harbor district, is the board may pass all necessary ordinances for the regulation of the district, including but not limited to Let me get it to work. Ordinances to provide for the protection and safety of persons or the property of persons using district facilities and persons and property in the waters subject to the jurisdiction of the district and adjacent property owned or controlled by the district. I like when I'm referring to this, I like to refer to as within the breakwaters, because the district really has jurisdiction within the breakwaters, both at San Francisco, South San Francisco Oyster Point and at Pillar Point Harbor. The Army Corps, once the Harbor District was established, was petitioned, and really it was the work of a retired Coast Guard admiral who was in charge of this area during World War II, pushing for the completion of a breakwater, which was completed in 1961. Johnson Pier construction was also completed in that time frame. And then, as we know, the berths and the inner breakwater were built in the 70s and the 80s. The district assumed under a joint powers agreement the management of Oyster Point Marina and Park. We don't own that property or that marina, but under the JPA, we manage that. And that JPA has now been replaced by the 2018 agreement in which we manage that facility. The district completed the construction of the docks at Oyster Point in the 80s, and then diversified the OPM and Park Recreational Marina to bring ferry boat service to the East Bay, dining cruises, marine educational programs in cooperation with the city of South San Francisco on area development. Go ahead, next slide. The district's jurisdiction and responsibilities, next slide. This is a chart of our area of responsibility. And if you'll look at Pillar Point Harbor, you can see the inner harbor and inner breakwater. Then you can see the outer breakwater. District clearly has jurisdiction over that area, and the West Trail below the Air Force Base, and in front of Princeton, up to the high water mark. We don't own the land above the high water mark in the area of Princeton and Barbara's Fish Trap. We own an easement across the beach at Capistrano Beach. And then going down past, we own the harbor and the parking lots, the West Trail that runs through the harbor, and then also the RV park there at Surfers Beach is also under the authority and ownership of the Harbor District. Outside the breakwater is all that area of land you see within our water, you see within the blue line. We manage and operate that water. We're responsible for it up to the high water mark across Surfers Beach, and then out to the buoys out there. So that's our primary area of responsibility for Pillar Point Harbor. And you'll see over at Mavericks Beach, we do not own Mavericks Beach. Mavericks Beach is owned by the county. So they own and manage Mavericks Beach. But we provide the only access out the West Trail to Mavericks Beach at this time. Next slide. Oyster Point Marina, after several different agreements with the JPA and renegotiations with the JPA, and then finally in 2018 with the agreement between the district and the city of South San Francisco, that area within the blue line is now our area of management for Oyster Point Marina. So we operate docks 1 through 6 over on the left-hand side of the slide, plus dock 7 right next to the spit. Then the Weta terminal on the right, and then docks 11, 12, 13, and 14 over there on the right also. We also manage the parking lots and the trail that run through the area within our blue line. We don't operate or we don't lease out any buildings anymore or manage the other side of the marina or the land side. The city of San Francisco and the Oyster Point development now has authority over that area. Next slide. Is this also mine, Jane?
Yeah, you can talk about it, or I'm happy to just provide a little bit of an overview on the foundational document that we are looking at. Do you want to? Yeah,
I can do this. I'm happy to do every single slide if you let me. The abbreviated history and the background documents, again, that are controlling and guiding us with this master plan is the San Mateo County Harbor District Strategic Plan, which the board approved in 2020 at the beginning of the year. The district master plan, which we're working on now and it's pending. This is done under the authority of the California Harbor Navigation Code, which I read to you, which talks about what our authority should be doing and what we should have action to take care of. District Ordinance Code, again, that ordinance code is passed by the board on how to run the harbors. And then the district policies, which guide staff on implementing the ordinances and ensuring the safety and the vitality of both Oyster Point Marina and Pillar Point Harbor. And then, as mentioned before, we have the new 2018 agreement between the city of South San Francisco and the Harbor District, which completely replaced the JPA. The JP is no longer valid, and we follow the 2018 agreement. And those are our foundation documents that we're considering as we work on developing this master plan, making sure they agree with each other. The other jurisdictions that we work with in coordination with, in other government agencies we work with, we have many, and that extends our reach a little, but we really try to focus on what the Harbor District is detailed to do by the code. But to accomplish our mission, these other agencies affect us, such as the County of San Mateo, the City of Half Moon Bay, the City of South San Francisco, San Mateo County Resource Conservation District, the California Coastal Commission, the California Division of Boat and Waterways, Regional Water Quality Control Board, Greater Farallones and Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuaries, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the Harbor Patrol partnerships with all the allied agencies to include the fire departments, police departments, and then the Bay Conservation and Development Commission. Sorry about that. The Harbor Search and Rescue activities and coordination. The Harbor District does have limited capabilities for search and rescue. And in the past, it was very, very limited. But in recent years, people have learned to depend on us to be the first responders for the coast side, both inside the harbor and outside the harbor. And we do respond to search and rescue requests from the sheriff or from the Coast Guard when we have the proper resources and training and equipment to do so. Again, our official responsibility is within the boundaries of Pillar Point Harbor and OPM. But again, we extend it out and provide assistance when we can if we're adequately staffed and trained and we have the proper equipment to do so. We limit our responses based on our equipment and travel time to Gray Whale Cove to the north, and then southwards to Pigeon Point is the area in which we try to limit our operation and effectiveness. Pillar Point Harbor right now has 3 rescue watercraft, jet skis, and 2 rescue vessels, the Radon and the Almar. Oyster Point Marina also has rescue vessel. Pillar Point Harbor staff regularly train with allied agencies such as the U.S. Coast Guard, San Mateo Sheriff's Office, San Mateo County Parks, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, CAL FIRE, CHP, California State Lifeguards, and we are looked at as experts and professionals in search and rescue in both heavy surf and normal ocean conditions based on our capabilities. Next slide.
Jim,
Now, turn it over to Bob.
Jim, before we move on, there is Chris Leong who asked a question just for clarification. Who manages Maverick's Beach? And that was kind of a few slides ago. So if you wanted to just touch on that to answer her question from a jurisdictional viewpoint, that would be good.
I can. Evening, Chris. The beach is owned and managed by the County of San Mateo. And when we're dealing with Mavericks and the safety of that beach, we routinely reach out to the planning department for those issues in the sheriff's department.
Thank you, Jim.
So a big part of the master planning effort is doing a condition survey of what's existing out there. There had been previous surveys done in 2014, and we're bringing those up to date to present day. And elements of those surveys are outlined here. For Pillar Point Harbor, you've got Johnson Pier, which includes the utilities under the pier. You've got docks A through H, also including utilities and safety elements. You've got the fuel dock at the end of the pier. You got various buildings and restrooms on the site, as well as parking lots and roads. You've got the rock slope protection, the bulkheads and promenade that are along the interior perimeter of the harbor. And then you've got the public fishing pier, the boat launch ramp, and various landside utilities, which we'll talk about. Next slide. For the condition of Johnson Pier, as you know, Johnson Pier is the backbone of the harbor and very much a focus of the harbor. So the pier and decking and perimeter bull rail were found to be well maintained and in good condition. The safety railing along the edges were also relatively new and well maintained in good condition. The pier utilities running underneath were recently renovated, and the piping and supports appeared to be in good condition. Noteworthy though, the electrical demand during peak season for either squid or crab, etc., were noted to exceed the existing capacity. The supporting piles and pile bents, or the beams that go across between the piles, the majority of the piles and bents are in good condition. Some of the reinforced concrete beams and bents at the end of the pier supporting portions of the deck were noted to be in poor condition and in need of repair in the next 5 to 10 years due to overstressing by excessive loading that we observed underneath, as well as one pile looked like it needed some attention under there. Yes, next slide, thank you. Docks A through C, those are the public docks. I'm sorry, they're the recreational boating docks, as well as docks D and E, which are the commercial fishing docks. And then you have docks F through H, which are a mix of the recreational boating and the commercial fishing docks. These wooden docks were constructed out of wood and ranged from serious to poor condition, indicating a need of replacement within 10 years. They were built in the 1980s there, as mentioned earlier. The fish sales dock, that's the concrete dock that runs along the side of the pier, was found to be in fair condition, indicating a need of replacement in 10 to 20 years. The fuel dock at the end of the pier was observed to be worn with an uneven freeboard and considered to be in serious condition, indicating a need of replacement of the fuel dock in 2 to 5 years. Next slide. The various buildings at Pillar Point Harbor, the tenant row building was found to be in fair condition. Again, we're just looking structurally at it, from the exterior mainly, and 10 to 20 years was our anticipated before that building would need any major upgrades, renovation, or replacement. The harbor office building had recently been renovated on the inside, as well as a new roof, and we found it to be in satisfactory condition with an anticipated life of 20 to 30 years. Similarly, the maintenance building was found to be in satisfactory condition. And then moving to the restrooms, there's the restroom serving the boaters for docks A through C. We found that to be in fair condition with an anticipated remaining life of 10 to 20 years. And the public restroom near the pier, similar. The public restroom at the boat launch ramp, however, we found to be in poor condition. That was a all wood stick construction compared to the CMU block construction found at the other restrooms. And we mentioned that that's about 5 to 10 years before that might need to be replaced and or majorly renovated. The fish fire building on the pier, we found to be in fair condition, 10 to 20 years. The ice house building on the pier, satisfactory condition, 20 to 30 years. I could expand on all those, but with the limited time here, we'll go to the next slide. The rock slope between the pier, Johnson Pier, and docks A through C, we found to be in critical conditions, already failed, and in need of immediate replacement. It's a high priority, but there is a fair amount of land area behind the top of slope. And also, it's good to note here that the rock slope over on the east side by the kayak area is currently under reconstruction. So, okay, the bulkhead, the vertical bulkhead made of concrete sheets appears to be in satisfactory condition. This is the one near the Harbor Master building, kind of goes around the base of the pier as well. and with an anticipated remaining service life of 20 to 30 years. However, the cap, the reinforced concrete cap on top of those sheet piles, we found that need repair in localized areas. So we consider that to be in poor condition, with those repairs recommended in 5 to 10 years. The various sidewalks and then that promenade along that bulkhead, conditions range from serious to poor depending on where they're at, with a remaining useful life of 2 to 10 years before needing replacement or major repairs. Those stairs at the base of the pier, we're going to say 5 to 10 years, given we've seen a bit of concrete spalling on those. And then the various landside utilities, they vary from fair to satisfactory condition, depending on where they're at. And, we were looking at everything from sewer lift stations to the storm drain system, to the fire water system, et cetera. Next slide. The public fishing pier has recently been renovated and in our opinion, in good condition with anticipated remaining life 20 to 30 years. The boat launch ramp, you're going to get a mixed bag here. The surface and the boarding float docks were found to be in fair condition, so 10 to 20 years. The concrete pavement, however, at the top of the ramp is in poor condition. It's starting to show signs of some considerable wear. So we're saying 5 to 10 years before you might need to replace that. The asphalt concrete from the top of the ramp over to the boater parking lot, we're saying that's in serious condition. You see a lot of degradation of that roadway and that parking lot. And we're saying 2 to 5 years before that needs to get replaced. There are also other, as you know, various parking lots and other roads, and they vary ranging from 2 to 20 years, depending on where they're at. Next slide. Okay, priority of repairs. So we had 3 different priorities, high, medium, and low. Outlining the high priority repairs here, we have Johnson Pier. Those electrical upgrades and the structural repairs we're considering to be a high priority. And they may need some retrofitting depending on the loading that's anticipated to be put on them. Docks A through C, as well as docks D through H, we're recommending full replacement for those. That'll require ADA gangways. We want to be up to current code, so that's in our recommendations as well. The rock slope between the pier and docks A through C, as mentioned earlier, we consider that a high priority repair. And while you're doing that, the district might consider doing the pedestrian promenade at the same time with mobilization, et cetera, it being convenient at that time. The boat launch ramp, as mentioned before, the parking lot and the access road, we're considering a high priority with full construction recommended. The fuel dock at the end of the pier, we're recommending that be fully replaced, noting that the fuel dock, the underground storage tanks on the land side at the base of the pier are double walled and up to code. The utilities underneath the pier serving the fuel dock are in good condition. It's the fuel dock itself, we're noticing some listing. These foam-filled flotation under the dock, it could be impacted by petroleum, et cetera. So we're considering that a high priority. Next slide, thanks. Medium priority for Pillar Point Harbor, we're saying the bulkhead wall, repairing those localized places on the cap. And then that east restroom, it's functional now, but eventually full replacement is recommended. The boat launch ramp, this is just for the apron at the top of the ramp, we're saying, and some of the missing armor stone is a medium priority, whereas the parking lot and the access road are a high priority for the launch ramp. Parking lots C and B, parking lot C is north of Pillar Point Harbor Boulevard, and then B is between the Harbor Master Building and the retail. We're saying eventually that's going to need resurface and restripe. And the sidewalks and promenade, there are some signs of uneven pavement, and we're saying replace damaged areas as needed, and the stairs. Next slide, please. Okay, Oyster Point Marina. Similarly, we are just looking at the existing, and as you know, a lot of folks know that there's a lot of construction going out there. So things like in the west basin, the docks 1 through 6, that parking area is pretty much demolished and being rebuilt right now, as well as those 2 restrooms. So right now, for our purposes, we're looking at docks 1 through 7 in the west basin, the guest dock that's there along the spit, docks 11 through 14 in the east basin, the various buildings and restrooms throughout the site, the parking lots and roads, the bay trail and landscaping, and those are notably in the east half of that mole as highlighted there on the slide. And then we have the public fishing pier at the far right or east of the area here. And then the boat launch ramp, landside utilities, and the seawall are located. It's excuse me, noted as the breakwater there, but that's the vertical seawall. Docks 1 through 6, those are in the West Basin. We're considering to be serious to poor condition, depending on which element of the dock you're looking at, and indicate needing replacement, full replacement within 10 years. And that would include the landside platforms. Dock 7, that's the one previously run by South San Francisco. That's in a bit, it's an older dock than docks 1 through 6. And now under the jurisdiction of the district, we're saying it's in critical condition and in need of immediate replacement or removal. Dock 11, that's that fairly new dock you see next to the WIDA terminal. And that's that concrete dock is fairly new, and it's got a good at least 30 years left in it. Docks 12 through 14, they're on the east part of the project or the site there. And those wooden docks, they're similarly older, I think in 83, the early 80s they were built. And those wooden docks are in serious to critical condition and in need of replacement within 5 years, which the district, I understand, has just approved replacing all of those. That's great. It's definitely needed. The guest dock, a fairly new concrete dock. It's in good condition with a remaining useful life of at least 30 years, but notably the access from the land side should be raised with any landside improvements. Next slide. The Harbor Master Building has been recently ADA improvements done to it. The interior has been remodeled, and we anticipate remaining service life of 20 to 30 years and replacement of the roof though in 5 to 10 years from what we saw out there. The maintenance building, similarly, overall satisfactory condition with a remaining life of 20 to 30 years. It does need some help on the exterior, so we recommend repainting and possibly remodeling the interior in 5 to 10 years. The 3 restrooms that are remaining on the east half of the site here, they're in satisfactory condition with an anticipated remaining useful life of 20 to 30 years before needing major renovations. Next slide, please. Other landside areas, we've got the roadways throughout the site, and they vary depending on use and location from 5 to 20 years before needing any major resurfacing or repairs. Parking lots, we've got the lower boater parking lot that gets submerged from time to time, as well as the Harbor Master parking lot and access road. We're recommending that those be raised with facility improvements to avoid flooding. Hence the upper parking lot is in better condition than the lower parking lot, which we're saying in 2 years, you're going to want to probably redo that. Sidewalks and Bay Trail, again, those depend on location. As folks know, the Bay Trail gets inundated from time to time with flooding. We're saying overall that the sidewalks and the trail are in fair condition, and but they should be raised with site improvements. Landscaping, we're saying, is in poor condition. We do have a drought here in California, so but depending on the location, that would be a priority or not. Next slide, please. Other elements within Oyster Point Marina, we've got the public fishing pier that was recently constructed. That's in good condition, 30+ years on that. The boat launch ramp constructed in 2009. The existing ramp and boarding float docks are in good condition and with a remaining life of 30+ years. Although notably, the top of ramp does get underwater during king tide events. And then we're also saying for this boat launch ramp that the access road and the trailer parking lot within the next 5 to 10 years should be resurfaced. Not as bad as Pillar Point Harbor, but it's on the list there. Landside utilities, they vary from port to fair, and we recommend replace or raise with site improvements. The seawall or bulkhead appears to be in fair condition. It was built in the early 80s. We are seeing, though, on the cap, some need for localized repairs within the next 5 to 10 years, as well as potentially some of the sheets. Okay, so high priorities within Oyster Point Marina. We're saying that Dock 7 immediately removal or replacement is recommended. Docks 12 through 14, Full replacement should be a high priority, and the district's doing it. Docks 1 through 6, full replacement. And to mention, for all these docks, the landings would need to be raised as well, and ADA gangways added. The lower parking lot and bay trail, as previously mentioned, we're saying is a high priority, and raising and full reconstruction of those would be needed if you're raising them up. The harbor master spit and parking lot and road also were, as previously mentioned, should be raised and reconstructed. And you would consider also that guest dock gangway platform would need to be raised to match that elevation. So medium priorities, landside utilities. There's a lot of different landside utilities associated with the site, and we're recommending those be raised. And then the seawall, as mentioned before, repair of that concrete cap and certain sheets are medium priority repair. And then, as mentioned, the boat launch, top of ramp, parking lot, and access road, a medium priority that should be resurfaced and raised with improvements. Harbor master building, we're saying replacement of the roof and eventually replacement of the building. And that's in a nutshell, the condition survey.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Bob. Really appreciate that excellent overview and the detailed content. So next item we'll talk about is sort of the master plan outreach and communication to date.
Janet, can it?
Yes, sorry, Jim.
This is Jim. I don't know if I missed it or not, but can we go back 2 slides? Bob, did you talk about the asterisks?
I can.
I can do it. I just didn't catch you. So I want to make sure that we note that, landside utilities, both the parking lot, access road, harbor master building, we're doing a lot of that in coordination with the city of South San Francisco.
Correct. And, South San Francisco.
We're working with them.
Yes. And, they've done studies on it and the spit in particular. And, they're recommending it be raised and sheep piles as well, is my understanding, which is
right.
Similar to our recommendation.
I just want to make sure clear that everybody knows that the district is not doing all this on their own. We don't know what this coordination is going to look like, but we're working on we're working in coordination with the city, as that
Right.
will let people know.
Great.
Great. Okay, thank you. So sort of just regrouping on the master plan outreach, the first step in the master plan process was to kick off the public and stakeholder communication for this project. We prepared a communication and engagement plan that outlined the purpose of the plan, methods, modes, timelines, and venues for communication and engagement. Contemporaneously, we worked with district staff and a number of stakeholders to compile a master stakeholder list. We then conducted a number of personal outreach opportunities through emails, through phone calls, and over a 2-month period, we really reached out to just about everybody on our stakeholder list, added people to the stakeholder list, and conducted personal interviews. Next slide, please. We then formalized a survey. Many of the discussions we had, personal interviews, led up to the construction of that survey. So surveys were conducted online and in person. We had 2 in-person survey and canvas events in June, and we were able to speak to a range of user groups, both in Pillar Point Harbor and Oyster Point Marina. And many of those folks lived in the communities immediately surrounding those 2 locations. But also we found a lot of people who were in far-flung portions of California coming to use those areas. All of those people shared their thoughts with us. And following on that, we had a number of team calls with various departments and leaders, city staff at the City of Half Moon Bay, City of South San Francisco, County of San Mateo, as well as many other folks, including elected and appointed officials for all of those jurisdictions. Next slide, please. Again, personal interviews were conducted with the harbor masters at both Pillar Point and Oyster Point Marina, as well as each of the harbor commissioners. And a presentation was given at the Mid-Coast Community Council meeting. Over the last 3 months, we've engaged in hundreds of conversations, and we have received a lot of directed comments, very substantive feedback, thoughtful observations, all of which we have synthesized both quantitatively and qualitatively. And that portion sort of will be reflected in the opportunities section of this presentation. Brad will be talking a lot about that in the coming slides. Next slide, please. We have continued communication and engagement opportunities. So again, while we've had a lot of conversation to date, communication work is always ongoing. And obviously you're all here tonight. We look forward to continuing that dialogue later on after the presentation, and do hope you will join us for upcoming workshops, as well as allowing us to add your email and or phone to our stakeholder list. So I'm going to turn it over to Asha for the next section of the plan.
Excellent. Thank you, Jane. So the preparation of the master plan document itself includes 3 main phases, which really incorporates a lot of the work that Jane and Jim and Bob have all discussed in previous slides. It's a highly collaborative effort in which all the pieces will eventually result in a master plan document. So the first phase enables our team to set the master plan process up for success, kind of really thoroughly understand what exists in the physical environment, which you heard from Bob on all those details, both land side and water side, listening to the expectations of the local community, a lot of which Jane just touched on. We have still a road ahead of us here, and then developing a firm understanding of the planning area's potential. Next slide, please. And then in the second phase, we're going to be developing and testing future planning scenarios for the master plan to really address the topics of harbor operations, landside and waterside activities, resources, facilities, public realm and mobility, as well as infrastructure. So each of the areas will be evaluated as they have their own distinct sets of opportunities, constraints, and users. And next slide, please. And then eventually in the third phase, we'll work to refine the preferred individual elements of the plan into a draft master plan document that strives to balance the district's operational needs as well as the community's aspirations. Our team is going to work to align the master plan clearly with the vision, goals, and objectives of the 2020 strategic plan, as well as the results of the outreach efforts and the public workshops that Jane was speaking to. Thank you.
Thanks, Asha. This next section will be Brad's domain, so feel free to jump in now and talk us through the next section.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jane. So in addition to the existing responsibilities that the Harbor District has that we've touched upon in some of the planned projects, the master planning process also sets out to identify and evaluate additional opportunities that could be pursued as part of this master plan. Through the extensive interviews and outreach and engagement to date that Jane kind of touched upon, we've received a great deal of input on a number of different things, including these potential opportunities for the district that don't include the planned projects. These different opportunities tended to fall into a number of categories, which we'll get into. But before I talk about that, the opportunities that came up, I just wanted to point out some of these planned projects that the district has that haven't been mentioned before that are actually large coastal projects, and 2 of them in particular at Pillar Point Harbor that will be planned for the next couple of years. The first one is the Surfers Beach Pilot Restoration Project, which addresses, since the Army Corps constructed the outer breakwaters in the early 60s, what happened was it changed the wave climate and the sediment transport so that the sand that would have ended up on the beaches outside of the harbor at Surfers Beach kind of shoaled and ended up inside the harbor, made it more shallow, which obviously presents a challenge to the district's management mandate to ensure for safe boating and anchorage. So in addition to that, along Surfers Beach, we have a severe erosion problem caused by those breakwaters as well. And what this project would do is to take the clean sand that has accrued inside the harbor, dredge it, and place it on Surfers Beach in a big berm to restore that beach habitat, which would also provide protection to Highway 1 and that coastline to the south. Now, in addition to the beach restoration component, The project has, actually, if you could just back up one slide real quickly. The Surfers Beach project also includes a harbor-wide eelgrass mitigation plan. We found that once the shoaling of sand inside the harbor occurred, it created, in the recent years, maybe the past 2 or 3 years, a habitat that was just right for eelgrass to start growing along that east breakwater. And in order to dredge, we need to do eelgrass mitigation. So the idea is that we're going to be transplanting some of that and creating new eelgrass mitigation off of the west breakwater where it's more appropriate and it has less human use, so that we can then get long-term permits and from the Army Corps of Engineers that will allow dredging in that whole east basin at any time without having to deal with the eelgrass mitigation in the future. So that would be a pretty big step. And the other thing that's going to happen along with the Surfers Beach restoration project is a major dredging of the boat launch ramps, which is pretty much due in the next 1 to 2 years. It happens every 6 to 8 years. So that'll be taken care of as well as part of this project, being planned for summer of 2022 and is in the permitting process right now. The next slide. The other big project I'd like to highlight right now is the West Trail Living Shoreline project. And this is a project that's actually out to bid right now, and construction will begin in the fall of this year. What the project would do is to restore the highly eroded section of coastline along the West Trail that goes out to Mavericks Beach. Instead of building a seawall or a hard structure, as is often done in the coastline, this is a coastal restoration project that will not only protect the coast, but also create new habitat, native plants and for animals and plants. And the way it will be built is by creating 2 big rock fingers mimicking the conditions up the coast that will help accrue the sand, filling it in with small rock and cobble, and then covering up with sand, clean sand, and planting those dunes with native plants. So in addition to the coastal restoration of the trail, the project also involves a major upgrade of the storm drain, stormwater drainage issues in the hills up above the project. And it will remove an existing outfall that goes directly into the harbor and reroute that with new infrastructure into a bio-infiltration basin that will then overflow into the marsh. So it will have a lot of good effects. Next slide, please. Okay, so in addition to those 2 projects and all of the things that Jim mentioned and Bob mentioned, there's a number of other projects in the hopper for both Pillar Point Harbor and Oyster Point Marina. But I'd like to change the tune now and talk about some potential opportunities. So like I said before, this master planning process sets out to identify new opportunities and evaluate those. And a number of them did come up through the stakeholder outreach that occurred and the individual interviews and surveys that we got. So I'm going to give several examples of those, but we've got a few caveats that I want to hit on before I present these ideas. Firstly, this goes without saying, but the Harbor District already has a limited budget and a long list of existing responsibilities and planned projects. So to take on any new activities or opportunities is going to require additional funding and staff capacity. And so there's limits to what the district can take on in the future. What we have here is kind of think of it as a wish list. It's a kind of compilation of what we heard. This isn't anything that's being proposed by our team or the Harbor District. This is just kind of reflecting the feedback that we received. But generally the comments fell into a bunch of major categories, which I'll just go through them real quick now, and then I can give you some examples in the next slides. So management of additional marina facilities, new revenue generating opportunities, new infrastructure at Pillar Point and Oyster Point, partnerships with other agencies and municipalities, public-private partnerships, and then sediment management opportunities. So next slide. The first one, management of additional marina facilities by the district. So under the existing authority that the district has, which Jim Pruitt went into in detail, we've determined that the district could take on management responsibilities for additional existing or new marina locations, as long as they're within the boundary of San Mateo County. And it would require extensive planning, agreements, and then passing of resolutions by both the Board of Harbor Commissioners and then the elected officials within the municipality where the facility is located. There are 7 other marina facilities other than Oyster Point Marina and Pillar Point Harbor in San Mateo County with an additional 2,100 berths. And the one that did come up several times in the comments being suggested that the Harbor District take on management responsibility for is Coyote Point, which is now under the jurisdiction and management of the county. So new infrastructure. This is stuff that's not slated to be, that's not in the planning or things that are going to be retrofitted per Bob's PowerPoint slides. But we've heard some comments ranging from, that there should be a new commercial fishing pier at Pillar Point Harbor where Romeo Pier used to be. So you can take the commercial activities and kind of separate it from the public. The existing Johnson Pier would be more of a fish sales place, visitor serving facilities, could be restaurants or shops, but you would take the commercial activities and move those to a new location to kind of separate those two things out. We heard a call for temporary or seasonal floating finger docks at Pillar Point Harbor that could host, small charter vessels or things like that. A habitat and native plant restoration project similar to the West Trail Living Shoreline project at other locations of the harbor. So we heard about the dunes by the East Breakwater and other locations that are now completely inhabited by ice plants and other non-native invasive plants. Kind of pull that up, restore it, and continue the momentum that we have with the West Trail project. Permanent restrooms on the West Trail right now where the portable toilets are has been another one that came up. Dry stack and stand boat storage, where you have the forklift that has a negative thing and picks up your boats, transport it into the water, and then drops it down. That was something that came up several times, and some of the recommended locations were, possibly somewhere along the Princeton shoreline, even over near the boat launch ramp, or in the parking lots behind that. And then a big theme that came up very often was a new fuel dock at Oyster Point Marina, as well as increased ferry capacity at Oyster Point Marina. Next slide. Okay, sediment management opportunities came up several times to create dredge management plans for Pillar Point Harbor and Oyster Point Marina. So I mentioned Surfers Beach at Pillar Point Harbor, and that's addressing the dredging needs in the boat launch ramp and the East Basin, but there's other dredging needs in the inner within the inner breakwater and other places. And Oyster Point is moving ahead with some opportunities as far as dredging as well. And then just general coastal sediment management type studies and planning. So it's doing sediment sampling and analysis, doing bathymetry studies, figuring out where we need to dredge and where we may be able to place that sand if it's clean within the harbor or outside as a beach restoration project, or if it needs to be, go offshore or be hauled to the land. We'd like to identify that in advance so that when the project occurs, it takes less planning. New revenue generating opportunities, of course, was a big one. Additional commuter ferry service at Oyster Point Marina to serve a lot of this industry that's coming in. A number of big biotech and tech companies are moving into this area, and it provides opportunity for the Harbor District to partner with those private companies and provide a commuter ferry service at Oyster Point Marina. Again, with the fuel docks at Oyster Point Marina and Pillar Point Harbor, with the district taking over that operation. There's a 40,000 square foot building that the city of South San Francisco is going to transfer ownership of a parcel to the district at Oyster Point Marina. So there's a number of different opportunities of what will occur in that building. And we've heard a lot of recommendations to have visitors serving facilities there, and meeting spaces, shops, cafes, even marine type businesses there. New RV park facilities with the shutdown of the kind of informal RV park in parking lot C2, I think it is, above the boat launch ramps by the Coastal Commission in the county. That took away some parking for RV parking for the fishing community and other visitors. And we've heard from a lot of people that they'd like to see more RV park facilities come back to Pillar Point Harbor. Additional retail, office, and fish sale facilities at Pillar Point Harbor. Renegotiation of district contracts was another one that came up. And then research and seek funding opportunities for infrastructure improvements at Oyster Point Marina. And this involves grant funding, other types of funding to try and bring in additional money so that the Harbor District can make additional improvements. And public-private partnerships, a new bait shop and marine services and repair businesses at Oyster Point Marina was one that was a big theme that came up often, as well as at Pillar Point Harbor, having marine services and repair facilities. And we heard several people request that there be a hoist somewhere that can haul out boats. So just commercial type marine businesses, and then increased recreational activities at Pillar Point Harbor, specifically additional kayak rental tours, small charter boats, that kind of thing, get more people out on the water and experiencing other kind of aspects of the harbor. And of course, additional visitor, this is kind of a general one, additional visitor serving businesses and educational opportunities at Pillar Point Harbor, Oyster Point Marina, anything from a kind of wildlife education center, marine biology center kind of thing to other, amenities that visitors can use. And then partnerships with other agencies and municipalities. As Jim Pruitt mentioned, we are in major partnerships with all kinds of agencies and municipalities already. This would be in addition to that, maybe formalize some of those, look at increased collaboration with the neighboring jurisdictions, marine ecosystem education and outreach. This is a big one in partnership with particularly the Greater Farallones National Marine Sanctuary, who's going to be doing all the educational signage within the harbor in the near future. So that's a good opportunity for the district to kind of work with them on that messaging and everything. And then strengthening enforcement and response partnerships with the allied agencies, water quality partnerships, particularly at Pillar Point Harbor, dealing with some of the water quality issues that are there with the Resource Conservation District, Water Quality Control Board, and others. Coastal resilience partnerships with the county. We've already applied for several grants related to the Princeton shoreline and other parts of the harbor that are experiencing issues with erosion. And then COVID-19 related economic recovery partnerships initiatives, joining with the city of Half Moon Bay and the county and trying to partner with them and do what we can to help the area recover economically.
Thanks so much, Brad. That's great. Really appreciate all that substance. Next steps for the master plan. So public workshop number 2 is obviously on the horizon. But between now and then, we will be working on guiding principles, the overall vision of the plan, analysis, opportunities, and feasibility. So, again, we're still conducting outreach and engagement, and that includes formalized relationships. A lot of the agencies that Brad mentioned, for example, San Mateo County is working on a number of different plans. I see it here in the chat as well, like Plan Princeton, there's Connect the Coast. City of Half Moon Bay has a coastside recovery initiative. So there are loads of opportunities to continue to have dialogue, find out where points of synergy are, points of opportunity for project development. So those will be looking at between now and our next workshop. And then public workshop 3 will really be kind of a preview and peek into the plan itself, just as we move forward. Those are opportunities on the next steps. And how you can continue to stay connected, next slide please, is follow us online, follow us on social media. Please send us an email with any thoughts or questions. Give us a call. We're happy to talk through anything. We are continuing to take personal interviews, and we're continuing to look at each and every one of the comments that comes in and provide a timely response to those. That is it really in a nutshell. I think I'd like to turn it back over to General Manager Pruitt and Chair Chang Carolee for the next session here on public comment. And if you do have public comment, please feel free to raise your hand. I see hands are already up.
Jim, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Great. So I am happy to open this up to public comment. I see that Commissioner Lorenzo's hand is up. Commissioner Lorenzo, would you mind if we took public comment first and then we'll go into commissioner comments? I don't know if you
Not
can.
at all.
Sorry.
Not at all.
Okay, great. Why don't we just open this up to public comment first? I don't know if I think Jane, I don't know, or if you.
Yeah, I'm
keeping-
happy.
Were you keeping
Happy to
track?
go through that.
Okay, I'm not sure if you were keeping track of who raised his or her hand first, but
Yes, so we have a comment, a hand up from Mr. John Olam. Go ahead, John. Feel free to unmute yourself, and then you have 3 minutes initially for public comment. Mr. Ullum? Would you like to provide a comment? You should be able to unmute yourself. Are you able to chat? Maybe put a question in the chat. Okay, Melanie, are you able to unmute him?
I can send him a request, but it's not working.
I see.
You know, John, you might try #9 or *9.
If you're on the phone, it doesn't appear that you're on the phone, but if you're on the phone, *9 should unmute you.
I don't know why, but he should be able to unmute himself. And I'm sending him a request as well, and it's not working.
Okay, maybe there's a connectivity issue. But Mr. Ullum, we know that you have your hand raised. If you're able to unmute, we'd like to hear from you. If you can't and you need to put something in the chat, please feel free to do that, or you're certainly welcome to follow up with a call or an email to anyone on the team. So at this moment, then I will go to Mr. William Smith.
Good evening, everybody, once again. First off, I want to say thank you for the online format for these meetings. For those of us that get up at dark 30 at 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the morning, this allows us the ability to participate in these meetings, and for that I thank you. I would like to see this format going forward, also for the San Mateo County Harbor District general meetings as well. Having said that, there's one of the things that were brought up here was the structural integrity of the main pier out on the end. One of the things that that I would like to see addressed with that, since there are going to be repairs done and structural work at that end, I would like to study the expansion of the end of the pier for a larger area for the three companies out there, but also for expansion for the fuel dock. Since the fuel dock is going to have to be repaired and there is structural work that has to be done at that point, these are two projects which should be married together and added and definitely taken care of to increase the abilities of the fuel docks, because as we all know, they're in disrepair, as well as the problems with the end of the pier. The extending of that westward towards the inner breakwater would not cause a problem, I believe, with the turning basin there for all vessels. The next part of this was that for restoration of overnight RV parking, As many of our customers come to the night before to go fishing with us, as an example, for my salmon trips, boarding time is 4:45 for a 5 a.m. departure. A lot of people would drive their RVs here to stay here instead of having to drive at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning to get to the boat for our departures. There was a very large portion of our customers that did use that overnight parking. I would like to see that issue addressed as well. There two long-range parts of this project is that we need to have a facilities in this harbor for some kind of boat repair. If I bend my propeller, the closest place I can go to get my boat worked on is either San Francisco or Santa Cruz. It's an untenable situation in that regards. And the second part of that is that there really does need to be a commercial pier to replace Romeo Pier for the commercial vessels to do their loading and offloading. This is really showing to be a big problem with the squid boats that have been accessing the pier these past couple weeks. I know it's a growing pain and we're all trying to work through it, but those are two long range plans that I definitely feel should be addressed in the long-term plan. Thank you very much for considering these comments. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Smith. Our next speaker is Mr. Dan Haggerty.
Yes, good evening, everyone, and thank you, everyone, for putting this on and allowing for community's input. Couple things. One, I wanted to talk about the Surface Beach sand replenishment project. And I mentioned lightly at the MCC meeting, by the way, I am an MCC member, about a concept of sand saver effort to somehow do a I don't expect the whole project to be, but some level of a trial area or some portion that could somehow at least put an effort to try to keep sand at the beach. Now, I do understand General Manager Jim Pruitt mentioned that California Coastal Commission does have concerns with the sand saver concept, and they may think that it's a hard armoring concept. But as we know that, we are not the only coast on the globe that has these problems of erosion. And, there are a variety, I've done a lot of research, there's a variety of types of efforts to try to minimize erosion. Some may work sometimes and some may not, but I just thought that it might be a good idea to at least explore possible options. If it's not the sand saver concept, something to eventually, try to help build sand dunes and do whatever it takes to try. Everybody knows that sand is probably the best buffer for erosion. It's just a matter of trying to do whatever it takes to keep it there. And I know it's very complicated, but I just thought that at least could be looked into a little bit, and maybe an opportunity with the sand replenishment at Surface Beach to do some kind of experimental trial, even if it's a small area, just to see what works and what doesn't work. Also, I've brought up in the past the lighting at the upper parking lot, very bright, very blue rich, and I'm hoping that with time that could be looked at and modified to more meet the dark sky efforts. And I know Jim is on it. At least, you know, I've mentioned it, and he's just wanted to just say it one more time, kind of keep it in everybody's mind. And I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Haggerty. Appreciate your comments. We have Mr. Barry Day, followed by, if there isn't any other public comment, Commissioner Lorenz.
Hello, have you got me there?
We do.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I just got, I guess, the master plan there, and it's pretty good, actually. It's broad and expansive. A couple of points. Security cameras.
Mr. Day, we're having a little bit of trouble. Mr. Day.
We're doing a big upgrade. Yes.
Yeah, we're having a little bit of trouble. It's coming in and out. I don't know if you're driving, maybe you can pull over. If not,
No.
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm parked. Am I still patchy?
Sounds fine now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was mentioning security cameras, whether that we can put that in the equation. That's just a point there to look at, you know, for the docks, etc. there. And two, William mentioned it. There was about 3 or 4 years ago a look at expanding the dock there with an L shape at the end of the fuel dock there. I'm wondering whether that could be reviewed again. There was some work done on that because there was a walk around going a couple of years ago with that one there. And obviously, you know, with the fish sales, I'll just stay in the loop on that. I don't need to mention that too much. But just those 2 points there, that prior look you did have with the expansion at the end of the dock and security cameras. That's my only 2 points there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Day. I'm looking for Mr. Ullum. I don't see that he's joined again. Do we have any other public comment at this time?
Jane,
Yes.
we do have William Smith for a follow-on comment for another 3 minutes. So we'll take this one from him. And then if there are no more public comments, then I'll open it up for commissioner discussion. But I'll also keep the public comments open so that we can have more public comments after the commissioner discussion. So right now, William Smith, if you would like to make your follow-on comment before we go into commissioner comments, that would be great. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
All right, my mute is off. Hopefully you can hear me. There was a plan. It was brought forth, I believe, about 3 years ago. There's been many different plans about the reconstruction of H-Dock and the fuel dock. And this, I'm just wondering if that, what the status of that, because that was part of the quote unquote master plan of that time. So is that just another iteration that has fallen overboard here? And the other part is, I believe that we do have cameras, some cameras in the harbor. I believe there's one on top of the ice house that looks down onto H-Dock. And I'd like a little clarification if that camera is indeed working. And those are my 2 comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
I don't see any other hands raised for now, so I'll open this. Oh, hold on.
Yeah,
Oh,
we have Mr. Ullum is back again, and we have Mr. Haggerty. And then I just have one question, Chair. If we want to answer questions in the chat before we go to commissioner comments, or if we wanted to do that at a later time.
It's up to you. It might be easier for you, Jane, if you want to do this in real time, because then you'll remember the question, you'll have it in front of you.
Yeah, I think it would be preferable if we have Mr. Ullum speak, Mr. Haggerty answer the questions in the chat, and then let Commissioner Lorenz make his comments, if that's okay.
Yeah, but before Commissioner Lorenz makes his comments, I'm going to be opening it up for all commissioner comments, not just Commissioner Lorenz.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Ullum, I hope you can join us now. I think you're potentially having the same challenge. There you are. We can, yes, we can hear you now.
Working now.
Thank you so much. Yes, we can hear you.
I appreciate the effort everybody put into getting me on here. Okay, I missed the first half of the meeting, had to work late tonight. Dog was not happy. So the thing I'm concerned about is, I believe one of the speakers brought it up, was the deterioration at the end of Johnson Pier. And, you know, the state of deterioration in both harbors, where there's just a lot of infrastructure that's at 0 to 5 years left. And there really is no money put aside to take care of a lot of these things, especially Johnson Pier. Apparently the former treasurer was confused and thought there was $7 million that they had put aside for repair on Johnson Pier, but that isn't the case. So I'm wondering, as part of your master plan, how are we going to deal with this chronic underfunding, overcommitment, or whatever the problem is that keeps us from running the harbor efficiently like a business where, you know, here on the coast side, we've seen so much infrastructure get run right up to the end and then get shut down. We have multiple bridges that have broken down and, you know, no one saw it coming. And here we see that you've got these damages at the end of the pier, and it's coming from years, decades of underinvestment. I mean, that's the only explanation for that. And I don't really see anywhere in the master plan where it discusses how to deal with this chronic situation. And it needs to be dealt with, because we've seen what happened in Florida. When concrete starts to break down, people sometimes shine it on, and then one day it just breaks. And now you got these heavy trucks at the end of the pier. I don't know how you guys can sleep well at night knowing the situation out there, especially when you're spending money on things like new offices and building new docks for another agency that has far more money than resources than you have. So I'm just wondering what the plan is to deal with the chronic financial difficulties that the Harbor District has. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ullum, and we really appreciate your persistence in being with us this evening.
So we have Dan Haggerty as well. This is a follow-on question, I think, or comment before we go into commissioner comments.
Yeah, just a couple other quick things. Excuse me. On aesthetics of you know, whatever is planned in general. As far as the ADA efforts, just wanted to remind everyone that there's a lot of communities that have settled with gray ADA pads as opposed to the yellow ADA pads, because they're more aesthetically approving, and they've obviously been permitted. It's standard in El Granada and many other locations. So that's one thought, how to approach the ADA pads. But in addition, any new concrete work, you know, I personally believe that it should be colored in some way, whether it's maybe a beige direction or a darker gray direction. I regret not putting an effort to see that the sidewalk expansion in front of the retail, Catch Joanne, et cetera, was not colored. The problem when you do not color concrete, and there is very little extra cost involved. Problem when you don't add any color, the result is a very white concrete once it dries. It's glaring to the eyes, and it picks up. It's like walking on a white carpet. You know, the gum stains stand out more. It just it looks less natural. Historically, it was very common to do coloring, and you know, I just wanted to encourage that to be considered. Some type of color to get away from that stark white of no color at all on concrete work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haggerty. And I think at this time we can take the PowerPoint down so we all can see each other a little bit better. Thank you very much.
I don't see any other public comments right now, Jane, so I'm going to open this discussion up for commissioners to make their comments. And I know that Commissioner Lorenas has been patiently waiting. So Commissioner Lorenas, would you like to start off the commissioner comments, please?
I would love to. However, I think what you wanted to do was take the questions from the chat.
Yes, I appreciate that. And
Oh, yeah, thank you, Ed.
I've looked through the chat and it appears that everything has been answered. So I think, with the exception of the question that just came in related to cameras at Oyster Point.
Jim, I don't know if he's there.
No cameras at Oyster Point Marina. Then there's a request to post the current master plan to the Pillar Point Harbor site. So I think we could certainly do that.
You mean the Facebook site?
Well, it just says the PPH site. So I would think it's already on the website. Yeah, I would think it's online.
The Harbor District's website.
Correct. So yes, I think that can be accommodated.
Okay, Commissioner Lorenas.
Okay, it would be useful for the public, I think, to have access to both the strategic plan and the what we're thinking with the master plan together, so that it's easy for them to find, because our website's a little hard for folks to navigate. I've got a couple of questions somewhat related to each other, just for starters. On the existing condition report, can you folks comment on the relationship between the existing condition and the upgrades and timelines you were discussing, and inevitable impact on both our properties with respect to sea level rise? Because it's important, I think, for us as a whole in planning to take that into consideration. And I know you guys know that there's some pretty good predictive tools with respect to sea level rise I know the resolution isn't that great, but I think it'll be important to consider this in our planning.
Yeah, you want me to take that, Jane?
Yes, please do.
So both sites do have extensive studies on them, and there is state guidance on different sea level rise criteria. The multiple studies that have been done over the years, statewide and nationwide, they take those and then they average. So there is state guidance on which particular elevations we should meet. And I believe for the Oyster Point, the extension of the Bay Trail or reconstruction of the Bay Trail has been done by the project there. So we're recommending that be carried through for Oyster Point Marina, all the way from the Bay Trail and the lower parking lot and the top of the boat launch ramp, that be carried throughout the district jurisdictional property. As far as it relates to Pillar Point Harbor, as we go into looking at different options for I don't want to say expansion, but whatever comes out of the Pillar Point Harbor master plan, we definitely want to consider sea level rise in that. So that would include the areas where the existing kayak rental is, bringing that coastal trail from so it connects with the commercial core, et cetera, in Pillar Point Harbor, we'd want to make sure that that's sea level rise is taken into account. So to answer your question, yes, sea level rise, there's 2050 and 2010, sorry, 2,100 elevations. We can way into the future there. So we do want to keep those in mind for any improvements. So hopefully that answers your question. I can get more specific if you like.
It kind of does. I was thinking that in some cases, I mean, sea level rise seems to be accelerating a little faster than folks had thought. And I know how state agencies work. They take quite a long time to come up with their recommendations, and those recommendations, by the time they come out, are often pretty far from the mark. And so when you're talking about some of the existing conditions on our properties that need repair, say in 10 years or maybe 20 years, how does that number relate to the fair needs?
No, that's,
you know what I mean? Because
yeah, that's a good question. So to answer it a couple of ways. One is, the anticipated life of these structures down by the water. In the past, when we would do a pier like Johnson Pier, way in the past, it'd be built for 50 years. Nowadays, we're designing it for 75 to 100 years. So that would include any retrofit or repairs. We would want to suggest things like sacrificial anodes within the concrete, and really strict quality control on any of the repairs, to make sure that they're going to last that length of time. So now the second part of that is, if it's going to last 75 to 100 years, I'll make sure it's going to stay above water in 75 to 100 years. So you'd want to use that larger, higher number in your planning, depending on the structure. I mean, if it's something that's only going to last 20 years, you might look at the 2050 number, but most likely you're going to be looking at the 2100 number. For example, the Bay Trail.
Okay. And the other related question to that is that, again, somewhat related to climate change, is we can expect more intense weather to hit us every so often. And one of the impacts of that is more runoff, more impacts on water quality within the harbor, which is already somewhat, or some would say pretty heavily impacted at times, especially wintertime, when we get a lot of runoff from the local area. Have you guys considered that in this scenario, in your assessment?
So, as we develop with the input from the stakeholders and the public, and we're going to be looking forward at different things for that. One of the running jokes is, with sea level rise, you don't have to dredge as much. Well, I don't know if that's exactly true, but but yeah, we definitely would consider all that. And it's being developed right now. So as we're developing it, given the stakeholder input and the public input on different things they would want to see, for example, a Romeo Pier, we would want to make sure that the deck level is up high enough to meet that long term, because we would want that to be designed for 75 to 100 years, but make sure that that deck level is appropriate. So anyway, hopefully that answers your question.
It does, thank you. And just a comment from my perspective, I think that when we talk about doing infrastructure changes, we should consider what we can do to mitigate some of the problems with just runoff from parking lots, for example. We have and we may have more parking lots in our jurisdiction, and when we do repairs, we should do them in such a way that we reduce the amount of water that runs off the parking lots directly into the storm drains, and then goes directly, because all the storm drains surrounding the harbor flow into the harbor itself. And we know from some of the work the RCD's done in Surfrider that bacterial levels increase as runoff increases.
Yeah, a good example of that too is, I've done a lot of work around the ports and stuff, and one thing we would do is under pier drainage, you'd capture the water off of a pier and you'd run it back to the land side and treat it. So if you do have semis driving out there, that would be something to consider. So
That was also one of my questions, so thanks.
Oh, sure.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Zimke, any comments?
Yeah, the only comment I have is I really enjoyed this presentation. I've gotten a lot out of it, and I want to thank Jim and the crew of consultants with the thoroughness of it. I thought it's really good.
Well, I have some more comments or questions.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Commissioner Lorenas.
That's
I
fine.
thought you were done.
I wanted to give other people a chance to comment, but
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
so another thought I've had talking to members of the public is if we're writing a master plan, it's an opportunity to maybe have some discussions about, for example, with Mavericks Beach, the district working with the county and taking more control over what happens at Mavericks Beach with some kind of agreement with the county. It's a problem because the county doesn't have the resources to control what happens there. It's a place that gets a huge and intense user group. You know, at any given day when it's extreme low tides, as most of you know, there's more people on the reef than there are reef themselves, and there's a lot of work by the wardens and county parks and members of the public to try to control what happens up there. So my thought with that is that there might be opportunities for us to work with the county who has control over it now, to control what happens at that beach.
Can I chime in for just a second, Ed? Because I agree with you. I'm not sure how we can do that. But I agree, especially with the erosion problem on, that one side of the cliff. I mean, what can we do to work with the county? Because that does affect the shoreline, which, has kind of, well, that's what led us to the Living Shoreline project. I mean, just the erosion in general. So I agree that if there's any way to enter into an agreement or some, I don't know what it would be. I mean, maybe we can talk about this at a meeting or something, but I agree that we've got to partner with the county a little more, especially for that area.
Mm-hmm. And we have the same jurisdictional relationship with the county and county parks with Pillar Point Marsh. We share a boundary there, and when we talk about controlling what happens there and also doing restoration projects, it's both San Mateo County Parks and the district, and even folks from Planned Princeton. It'd be good to have discussions about that, how that relates to the general plan, so we actually get something on paper and can move it forward from there. Otherwise, it just sits in the ether and nothing ever gets done.
Yeah, I agree, especially because there's so many cross-jurisdictional.
President Crawley, if I can make a comment on this point.
Sure.
And Commissioner Lorenas, that area is also, a lot of that property is owned by the United States government through the U.S. Air Force Base. So they own much of that bluff above the West Trail, and they own the bluff above Mavericks Beach. I don't know how far down the bluff they own it on the Mavericks Beach side, but they come pretty close to the West Trail on their side of the property of that bluff. So most of the coordination with that bluff would have to be with the U.S. Air Force, I believe.
Right, but Jim, there might be other areas where there are cross-jurisdictional issues, right? That, I mean, I don't know, maybe we can identify some of them just to see what kind of collaboration we can do. I think, Ed, that's probably what you're alluding to as well. It wouldn't just be Mavericks per se, right?
Well, with respect to Mavericks Beach, it's more about what happens out on the reef, and also just on the beach itself, because it gets a huge number of folks using it. I think the district has done a good job of getting some life rescue stuff going in that direction. That's an important aspect of what we do, but also just management of that area, trash pickup, things like that. And then with respect to the Air Force, this is something that our GM has experience with, working with large government organizations, and getting a voice in there. And the Air Force did do some habitat restoration work on their own at Pillar Point Bluffs on the northwest side of the bluffs. And, you know, my take on that was, even though they did it kind of unilaterally, my take on it is they have some aspect of what they do that's good for public relations and public access. And so having a conversation with, if it's possible, with them about some of our issues and how they might collaborate with us would be a good thing. And if we have it on a master plan, then it's something that could, you know, prioritize somewhere in there. You know, talk is cheap, so at least starting there, we might get something done.
Thank you. Commissioner Mateusz, I'm not sure if you have any comments.
That was an excellent presentation of the master plan. It was very informative. I agree with Commissioner Zemke.
Any other commissioner comments? I'll say also that the presentation was very good. Great, actually. Thank you so much for working with us, and thank you to all who have been involved with from the stakeholder outreach and giving your input. And I'm very glad that, you know, we have a lot of people here today, you know, kind of watching what is happening and giving input. And staff has been wonderful in terms of helping us get everything ready and getting this meeting done. So I'm going to call for last comments from commissioners, if you've thought of anything.
I have some more.
Okay. I don't mean to interrupt you, Commissioner Lorraine, so just chime in if.
I don't want to monopolize the floor, so it's fine.
Okay, go ahead.
One of the things that's important from my point of view with respect to Oyster Point Marina is, since we have very limited control over what happens there because we do not own the property, we're spending some money on docks and such, but it's really the city of South San Francisco that's running the operations down there. I think the district should use whatever limited power it has to make sure that we increase and protect what level of public access to the shoreline exists there already. If it's possible to enhance it, even better so. And also to keep an eye on the environmental protections that need to be in place on all the work that's being done there. And I'll leave it for that, like that for now, but I'll make more comments in the next round.
Okay. When you mean next round, Commissioner Lorenas, I think you can continue with your round if you have another round.
Okay. I see there's still members of the public here, and I would say to them, if you're interested in what's happening, what potentially can happen at Oyster Point Marina, have a look at what happened in Redwood City. I think the commissioners would do well to have a look down there. At Pete's Harbor off of Whipple, that used to be an area that had a lot of public access, and the land was developed into condominiums, and public access there now is much, much more limited. There's still some there, but it's not what it used to be. And my concern is that that's the same sort of thing that will happen at Oyster Point. So it's worth the trouble if you're anywhere near Redwood City to just go have a look. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Lorenas, do you have any?
Nope, I'm done. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. So any other public comments that anyone wants to make? Okay.
We do have a couple hands up. We have Mr. Ullum, and I just have the first name of Carrie. So Mr. Ullum, please go ahead and make your comments. You're on mute.
Okay.
There you go.
Well, again, my concern is the financial situation in the district. And I had a chance to skim the report that you all had and notice that the fuel docks are down to 0 to 2 years of use left in them. And I can't imagine what would happen if the fuel docks got shut down even for a couple days. I remember the last time that they were shut down, people really freaked out. So again, I really don't see anything in this master plan that acknowledges the situation as it is that you've got a lot of infrastructure you have that is deteriorated, wore out. You have a district that is taking on more and more responsibility, and things just are left to go until there's no choice but to fix it, and hoping that that there's going to be grants from somebody to take care of the deterioration that's occurred at the end of Johnson Pier, and that's just irresponsible. It's like this is something that needs to be dealt with, and there needs to be a plan, and there doesn't seem to be any acknowledgement that you're not spending your money properly and haven't for decades. And there's a reason why the harbor has such dilapidated infrastructure, and the same out at Pillar Point. The district does not have enough money to subsidize 2 harbors. It barely has enough money to subsidize the one that it should be subsidizing. Your most important piece of infrastructure, the piece of structure that defines the reason for the harbor district, is Johnson Pier. Was put there to service the fishing industry, which is we consider vital here on the coast side, and is part of our heritage and our makeup, and something that we're proud of. And so it doesn't seem to be a lot of worry on the part of the commissioners as to who might get hurt. And you saw in the pictures of the infrastructure wires hanging out that laying on the ground. And I don't know how much voltage is in those wires, but it looks like a general indication of the little things that are just falling apart out there. So I'm wondering again, what is the plan to deal with the long-term financial situation that exists at the harbor district? Does anybody honestly think that you can generate enough new revenue opportunities to catch up with what you've got going right now? And the last question is I've not yet heard anybody acknowledge that the harbor district is an enterprise district. You're supposed to be paying for as you go, and there's no one even mentions that anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ullum. Our next commenter is Carrie.
Good evening. It's Carrie Burke, and I did post a question in the chat. How will the Pillar Point Harbor Master Plan dovetail with Plan Princeton effort by San Mateo County? And also, it's my understanding that there is a use permit for the harbor's landward improvements in Princeton, and is that going to be coordinated with the county to update the use permit and have some consistency throughout all these documents? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Carrie. So yeah, we are coordinating with all the jurisdictions where there is an opportunity to coordinate. We've had a couple of calls with San Mateo County with the planners on Plan Princeton, and are identifying those opportunities to sync up those efforts.
Jane, can I just chime in on that really quickly?
Yes.
This is Brad. I'm sorry. So with the Plan Princeton, the district actually did partner with the county on a couple of grant applications to do some planning and some studies to push that project forward and the protection of the coastline there. Unfortunately, the first 2 efforts, we didn't get rewarded the grants, but it's an ongoing effort. So
yeah, so I think thanks for providing further detail. I think we have to identify those opportunities and then continue to follow up on that. There are certainly more ways where relationships can be formalized, resources can be leveraged.
Great,
Okay,
thank you
we
so
have-
much.
I'm so sorry, Chair.
No, no, no,
Ellen,
go
we
on. I'm just, oh, we have more.
We have more, yeah, we have more public commenters. So we have Fran Pollard, and pardon me if I haven't pronounced your last name correctly. And then again, Mr.
One
Ullum.
last question from Mr. Olam. Thank you.
Fran Pollard.
Hi, yes, I'm Fran Pollard. And I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of the meeting. And so I don't know if you answered this. I've been wanting to do the survey and I've been preoccupied with many other projects right now. So I haven't gotten around to it. Is it too late to do that?
No, certainly. We would be happy to send it to you. Would you like to take, excuse me, the Pillar Point or the Oyster Point?
Pillar Point.
Pillar Point. Okay. Can you pop your email either in the chat, or if you want to send it to the master plan at smharbor.com, I will happily send you a link to that survey.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ullum, followed by Kathy T.
You unmuted me?
We can hear you.
Okay, fine. So again, I appreciate that you're answering questions that people are asking, but it seems to me that the question I'm asking is pertinent. And, you know, to the situation that you're going through, how are you going to pay for all the stuff that you want to do? And the only thing I've heard is grants. And grants and your income have led you to this situation you find yourself in today. So it seems like we're spending a lot of money to put together a plan and doing kind of pretty much the same thing that we've been doing for the last 50 years. And I don't see anybody talking about how they expect that to make things better. And if, you know, there's great opportunities out there to pick up grants, that's great. But you do have some responsibilities to manage the money you have properly. And sometimes when companies like, you know, enterprises find that they've taken on more than they can handle, they cut back. They look at the operations that they have to perform, the things that they're chartered to perform, and then look at what they're doing extra that isn't doing anything for them. And there's just none of that in this master plan, no discussion of this at any time in the Harbor District as to why are we begging for money to maintain something that's supposed to be paying for itself. So hopefully, again, I would hope for some kind of answer, not maybe from the consultant, maybe from the treasurer or from the staff that understands what the plan is or what they're looking about. But is there a plan or a thought of looking at how the Harbor District itself does things, the decisions it makes, and the commitments it has made, and has it made mistakes and that should be corrected and still could be? Thank you, and I appreciate the extra questions, and I do appreciate that people are answering questions. It really happens. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time and your comment. Kathy?
Hi,
thanks.
So they're answering every other question, but they will not talk about the money.
Might want to mute, John.
Yep. Kathy, thank you. This will be the last question we'll take tonight. Thanks.
Okay, and I want to apologize. I was juggling working and paying attention to this, but I just wanted to clarify if I heard correctly that one of the things under consideration is building a new pier at Romeo and moving commercial fishing to that pier.
Mr. Ullum, can you please mute so other people can have their chance to speak?
Normally you guys mute me just fine. I didn't know that you were still listening to me.
Kathy, I'm sorry. Thank you for your patience. If you'd like to
That's okay.
continue.
I'm accustomed to Zoom meetings all day, so I just wanted to clarify if that was something that was under consideration for the master plan, and if it's in the published document, you know, considerations for traffic to that area and how shallow it is in that area and things like that.
I can address that question. Kathy, this is Jim. That's just been a subject or a topic brought in by some public comments. So all public comments will be looked at and considered. How far it goes in being placed into the master plan is still up in the air as we work through this process. But right now, it's just an idea somebody brought up.
Oh, okay, because it was mentioned while presenting, so I thought it might be a viable idea. But thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone, for being here and participating. We really appreciate the input and the questions, and thank you to the commission for you know, being open-minded and listening, and of course to the staff. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Jim, John Moran, and Julie also for kind of supporting this entire effort. It's very important. And as Jim said, I think we have 2 more of these. Is that correct, Jim? 2 more public workshops? Jim, you're on
Correct.
mute.
2 more public workshops, and they're
Okay,
both
so
functions.
So if you're interested, just kind of, you know, look on the page, or, you know, if you're on our email list, you'll receive a notice. If you're not on our email list, the Harbor District's email list, this would be the time to add your name to there as well if you would like to receive notices. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I will so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please, Melanie.
President Chang Crawley,
Aye.
Commissioner Matoush,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz,
Aye.
Commissioner Zemke.
Aye.
Great. The meeting's adjourned at 7:52. Thank you everyone for being here, and thank you to our great consultants. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your
Thank you.
time.
Bye.